Hey guys, I hope you're doing good. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you the ultimate travel guide for traveling up the east coast of Australia in 3 weeks. This is something that I did with my best friend last year in November 2024. We were able to see all the main sites without feeling too rushed and not having really long travel times in between each destination. This video isn't really aimed at backpackers that have months on end able to travel the whole of Australia. This is more so for people like me that were only able to get 3 weeks off work and you're really trying to fit everything in without spending too much money, but equally not skimping too much because it is a trip of a lifetime. I'm going to be taking you through my itinerary, giving you top tips for planning, budgeting, packing, plus my personal recommendations of places to go, things to do, and also mistakes to avoid and also some places to avoid. So first things first, I'm going to take you through my itinerary. So we first flew obviously from the UK to Melbourne. We had 3 nights in Melbourne, but actually only 2 full days because we landed there at night time. We then flew from Melbourne all the way to Byron Bay. I say all the way, it wasn't that long at all. Stayed in Byron Bay for 2 nights. And then we got the bus to Surfers Paradise, which we only stayed there for 1 night. After that, we then got the bus all the way up to Noosa. And you might be thinking, why have you missed Brisbane out at this point? Well, that's because we stayed in Noosa for 3 nights and then we got the bus back down to Brisbane so that we could then fly all the way up to Early Beach. So we stayed in Brisbane for another 3 nights and then we flew from Brisbane to Early Beach and stayed in Early Beach for 5 nights because we just wanted a little bit of chill time, and I think that's super important, and I'll get to that in this video. So then after Early Beach, we then flew all the way back down to Sydney. Of course, you can't not go to Sydney when you're doing the east coast of Australia, and we stayed in Sydney for 3 nights. I then had a return flight back from Melbourne, so I flew back from Sydney to Melbourne, had another night in Melbourne, and then flew home. This itinerary did work well, but now I've done it, there are a few things that I would do slightly differently. I have actually already uploaded daily vlogs on YouTube, so if you wanted to see what I did in each day, then head on over to look at those. But you'll see that on day 2 in Melbourne, we did the Puffin Billy Railway and Penguin Parade tour. That is something that I would only do if I had more time in Melbourne, and because we only had 2 full days together at the beginning, my last day in Melbourne was on my own, I wouldn't have done that, and I would have had another full day in Melbourne just to be able to see the city a little bit more and also go out at night time. But I guess it just depends on your personal preferences, why you're going, who you're going with, blah blah blah. The other thing that I wouldn't have done is go to Surfers Paradise. I personally didn't think it was that special. It was just like a gorgeous city on a beach. Maybe I was missing out on some special places there, but my personal experience was there wasn't that much there for me. So I would have skipped that and saved that night to do something else. And I also probably would have done maybe 1 less night in Noosa, maybe 1 less night in Early Beach, and combine that to maybe go and do Fraser Island or maybe a couple of nights up in Cairns. So now I'm going to give you some top tips for planning. So personally, I think the best time to go up the east coast of Australia is in their summertime or just before their summertime, because you're getting the best weather and you're not having to worry about big heavy clothing items, and you can just go and enjoy the summer. Plus that's amazing if you're from the UK, because then it means you're getting basically an extended summer. When it comes to booking transport, obviously if you're not completely on a really tight budget, I would obviously recommend a few internal flights in there. Just because you're only limited to 3 weeks, those flights definitely narrow the time down and then means that you're in the next destination a lot quicker, and they're not actually that expensive. We did a few Greyhound buses, which were so good, such nice buses. In an area like Early Beach, I would recommend hire cars as well. Make sure that you research the travel times in between destinations and plan accordingly, because sometimes it might be a lot longer than you thought it would be. Then you need to make sure that you're picking like a time that you don't lose out on days or time in a place. In terms of accommodation, I would personally say that Airbnbs are the best way to go about it. If you're picking somewhere with good reviews in a good location and potentially with a super host and you're onto something good, then you've got somewhere to save money because you could eat in sometimes, you've got the privacy, and it's usually cheaper than a hotel but still just as nice. Another thing that we did was stay in private rooms of hostels. It's not as expensive as a hotel, but equally you've still got the privacy. You don't have to stay in a dorm. Another thing is to make sure that you've got all your travel documents, your insurance, and your visa sorted way in advance of going to Australia. In terms of budgeting for a 3-week trip, in terms of similar to what I did, I would say you're gonna be needing to budget in total about 5 grand for this kind of trip. To break it down, this is what I did, this is how much I roughly spent, but obviously you could spend a little bit more or you could spend a little bit less. In terms of your main flights, they're gonna cost you around a grand if you're traveling from the UK or somewhere similar. You then got your accommodation for 3 weeks, which again, I would budget around £1,000 for this. If you're traveling with somebody else, then I would be saying that that's around £50 each per night. So obviously if you're traveling on your own, I'd be budgeting more like £100 per night. But then you might want to stay somewhere like a shared dorm in a hostel, which again would be cheaper. Then when it comes to food, drinks and spending money, again, this is all down to personal preference, what you want to do in your days. I'm a big foodie. I also like having a drink when I'm with my best friend. So I would say that £70 per day was probably a nice sweet spot. So you're probably looking at about £1,500 for the whole trip. Obviously you could save money by eating in sometimes or making packed lunches, also having pre-drinks rather than buying out your drinks, and being a bit more selective with the places that you go and the food that you choose. But for me, I felt like that budget was quite comfortable and I wasn't like restricting myself to anything. Then in terms of internal travel, I would say around £500 should cover this. If you're going to do loads of internal flights, then maybe increase that a little bit. But in terms of what I did with a mix of internal flights and Greyhound buses, I would say £500 should be safe. At this current in 2025, you don't know how things are going to change. And then in terms of activities and tours and experiences, I would then use the final £1,000 in that budget for all of that. Obviously, again, you can change that for whatever you want to do. But for me personally, this was a trip of a lifetime. We didn't want to skimp on some of these experiences, so we did spend our money and I absolutely loved it. So you'll be able to refer to all of my daily vlogs where you can see all the different experiences that I did each day. But just to give you a little bit of a rundown and give you some of the absolute highlights from the east coast of Australia that I did, here's a few. And this is in no particular order, but this one definitely is at the top of the list, is a skydive. We did ours in Airlie Beach and oh my goodness, it was the best thing I've ever done so far in my life. Obviously, if you're not an adrenaline junkie or you're scared of that kind of thing, then maybe not, but unreal. And I say if you're scared, but my friend was scared and she still loved it afterwards, so definitely consider that. And in somewhere so beautiful, jumping out in front of the Whitsunday Islands, chef's kiss. We also in Airlie Beach went to Breddall's Wild Farm, which was incredible too. We were able to hold koala bears, all different Australian wildlife, and see all the crocodiles and snakes, and it was just so much fun. I was in my element and it was kind of like off-piste, which was fun, so it didn't feel as touristy. I would also recommend the Bondi to Coogee walk in Sydney. I would also obviously recommend climbing the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Like, it is a proper touristy thing to do, but like, it ticks off so many boxes and you really just feel like, oh my God, I'm in Australia right now. So incredible, and you learn so many facts. Then again, up in the Whitsunday Islands, we did the fly and raft package. We flew over the Great Barrier Reef. We went to Whitehaven Beach. It was literally the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So gorgeous, such a fun day. In Brisbane, there was 2 standout places in Brisbane. We had Felon's Bar and Joey's Bar. So fun, views were immaculate and just vibes were popping. The AP Bakery in Sydney has a gorgeous rooftop, so if you're into all of your bakes, that is the one. I literally loved it there, and the fact that that's like standing out on the list clearly shows as a foodie it must have been a good spot. Lastly, in Noosa, the National Park Coastal Walk, absolutely stunning. What I love about Australia the most is the gorgeous scenery and the wildlife and the views, so much more than the cities. They are amazing, but you get cities everywhere, whereas what you actually see with your own eyes when you just take a step out of the city is literally breathtaking. Now then, when it comes to packing tips and essentials, I could probably do a whole separate video on this in more detail, but I'll try and keep this short and condensed just to things that I definitely think are key to know before you go to Australia and for this kind of trip. So first thing is packing cubes. This is just so helpful when you're traveling from place to place. It just means that you've got everything organized into individual cubes so you know where they are, you're not having to unpack all the time, and you can just easily pop them back in the suitcase. I would also then say versatile outfits. Australia, I would say the culture is very much just casual, so I don't think you need to be deep in some like fancy outfits. You can just be taking like different t-shirts, different shorts that you can mix and match. You don't need to be taking loads of stuff. When it comes to shoes, trainers, flip-flops and sandals are probably all you're gonna need unless you're wanting to do like hikes, in which case you can take you some hiking boots, but just see how much space you've got in your suitcase. I didn't have that much, unfortunately. Microfiber towel as well, rather than taking loads of beach towels and stuff. It's such a good traveling tip that I've picked up along the way. It literally dries you so quick and it's so small compared to a normal towel. And also don't forget your plug adapter as well. You're not in some really remote place, you are in Australia. They do sell everything that you can buy here, there, so I wouldn't panic too much as long as you've got your absolute essentials and important things. So I've actually come up with 3 mistakes to avoid. First thing is to make sure that you research restaurant opening hours. When we got to Byron Bay, we were very much in holiday mode and we just thought we could leave our Airbnb at like 8:30 in the evening, rock up to restaurants and just thinking they're open until late. All of them were like kitchen closed by 9 o'clock, so none of them would let us in. We ended up going to a bakery that like was open till 3 a.m. really randomly and eating pies on a park bench. Like core memory and so funny, but equally like not what we planned. So I would just look into things like that maybe whilst you're like traveling in between each destination. Another thing is to make sure that you book all the big activities and things that you desperately want to do in advance before you even go to Australia, just to avoid any disappointment of anything becoming booked up. Things like skydiving and climbing over the Sydney Harbour Bridge and even going to the farm that I mentioned are all things that will get booked up way in advance, and you can't be too spontaneous with those. Everything else though, I would say, you know, you don't need to plan your day by day, minute by minute. Definitely give yourself some freedom to be spontaneous every day. You know, we planned all those big things, we planned the travel and those timings, but once we're in a destination, we decided what we wanted to do when we were there, really, because the enjoyment out of traveling and making memories also comes from spontaneity as well. So leading on from that, I would say the third thing is to try and avoid jam packing every single day. Like on a 3-week trip where you're touring around and traveling, you definitely need some time to just chill. I mean, you may be one of these people that literally is go, go, go every day and never gets tired. But I would say for most people, you know, you are on holiday at the end of the day. You don't want to be getting home and thinking, oh my God, I need a holiday for the holiday. So if you're watching this video, you're obviously tempted on doing a 3-week or some kind of trip to the east coast of Australia. And my overall piece of advice is just do it. Life is way too short. Save the money. You know, you can see how much I've roughly budgeted for a nice, comfortable trip when you're out there, but there are ways to do it slightly cheaper too, or ways to make it even more bougie. I would just say you're doing the right thing right now by planning in advance. You know, you need to make sure that you're in a comfortable position for when you get there, you can live in the moment and literally take in how incredible Australia is as a country. If you've got any questions, then please drop them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer them for you. Or if you've had any experiences of traveling up the east coast of Australia that you'd also like to share for other people, then please also pop those in there too. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, then please make sure to hit that subscribe button. I am so grateful for everybody that subscribes to this channel. It really means a lot. There's always videos coming, and by you subscribing makes me want to make even more videos because I want to give you something useful, something entertaining to look out for. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.